you get it, you might can take some kind of a cocktail, antiviral drug, but it doesn't go away. It might even be undetected, but it's not going to go away. It's a major problem. Yes, sister.
Can you define zina for me?
Thank you.
Oh, zina is adultery. Thank you. I beg you, if I say a word and you don't know what it means, please raise your hand. Because it's hard for me to, sometimes I forget and I use Arabic terms.
So I just have one question.
All the questions you have, your questions are my questions.
Word on zina, follow up on zina. Is zina only physical, or it could be also
It's both physical,
fantasy,
visually, and mental.
Hold on a second.
or having like phone sex or email sex?
There's zina of the eyes, there's zina of the tongue, there's all kinds of zina, brother.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me say something that's very important here, and everybody, I want you to listen up. I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, I'm a virgin unless certain things don't count. Well, I'm going to try to do this as tactfully as I can. But there's a three-letter word over here that some people don't like me to use, and it starts with an S. Anything adjective before this makes this what it is. Everybody get my point?
No.
Okay, can I explain it to you later?
Okay.
Because with mommy I can tell it just like it is. But there are young children here and I want to respect their dignity. Okay? So we take medicine how? We take oral medication. Alright, so we'll put that kind of medication here and this word over here. Are you a virgin if you've done that?
No.
No. Because virgin means unsoiled. Now in Islam, let me say something that's very important. It's just as important for the male to be a virgin as it is the female. But we have a double standard out there that's straight from the pit of hell. The shaitan has messed with our brains, and I'm not even going to blame the shaitan, we're responsible. And there's a double standard out there. In our community, if a guy has slipped up, they sort of say, Alhamdulillah. But oh my God, if a girl slipped up, astaghfirullah. And that is wrong. It's haram. And you don't hear me say haram very much, because I don't like haram police. But I don't like double standards either. I don't like my religion being hijacked. And when you make a different standard for women than you do men, you're hijacking my faith, because my faith is a faith of equality. And I'll get off that soapbox.
Allah asked a mu'min, a mu'minat.
That's right.
A Muslim, a Muslimah.
Very good. Establishes the family environment. Marriage, according to Islam, is a necessary step toward establishing a healthy environment for nurturing and rearing children. Our children are the fruits of our generation and the future men and women of our ummah. Through good marriages, we furnish them with the love, mercy, compassion, and guidance that they need for proper growth and development. You know, there's a lot of research out there now that really concerns me as a behavioral scientist. And it looks like the world is trying to convince the rest of the world that same-sex parents do just as well with parenting. And that really concerns me. Now, I'm not knocking any people. That's not what I'm here to do. But what I'm here to say is that in my years of experience in counseling people, in my experience, children need the nurturing of a mother and the nurturing of a father. And I said it purposely the way I said it. Yes?
And it goes back to women are wired different than men.
Yes. And we need both, ideally. We have so many stats on the percentage of kids that do not have two parents that don't graduate from high school. A higher percentage of them end up in prison. A higher percentage of them end up on drugs. And just shake Google. We go to the scholar portion. Put in scholar. Scholarly articles on the results of not having two parents. And I don't mean two same-sex parents. I'm just got to keep it for rizzle for snizzle here. Yes, sister.
I had a question about that. Couldn't a lot of those consequences come from the stigma that lots of the society puts on those children? You know, like, oh, that child's from a broken family, so obviously they're not, you know, don't hang out with them because you don't know what they're like, or that child's from a broken family, I don't want my children hanging out with them because they could drag my children into such and such trouble. And couldn't that be, I mean...
I think what you're saying is reinforcing all of this. Exactly. I agree with you 100%. Because, you know, I was trying hard to be a Muslim. Trying hard to live my religion. And you know what people said to me? We don't let our children play with Americans. And they said that in the Muslim community to me. So the rest of the children that my child went to a Muslim school, they got invited to parties at the Muslim's house, but mine didn't because she was an American and she was darker than any of them. She used to cry every day we picked her up from school and every day we dropped her off. Do you see the correlation? So we have a lot of this marriage thing and this family thing is a reason I'm teaching it. We need to revive the Sunnah. We need to get out of what the Western world is teaching us and look at the principles that we need to adopt. We need to accept people. And this is why I don't want to sound castigating when I talk, but I do want to talk from an empirical base, and most importantly, a Quranic base. Did you want to add anything to that? Did you? Okay, thank you. Good comment. It increases the number of Muslims. Now some of you might be saying, well, I don't know about that. I have so many children and only one of them or none of them is practicing Islam. Well, then we have to go back and say, were you and your husband or your husband and you practicing Islam? Because people come to me and they say, well, you know, I only started practicing Islam a year or two ago. But their children are the product of a family that they never saw their children pray.
Their parents pray.
Thank you, their parents pray, yes. So are they the product of what I'm talking about, Muslim family? No. When I talk about the product of a Muslim family, I'm talking about the product that saw Dad get up for Fajr and wake up the children and say, we're going to pray now. It's those children seeing Dad and Mom pray 5 times a day. A family where Mom and Dad didn't sit around and gossip about the Imam. Because regardless of what you might think about the Imam, is that a position of respect?
No.
Islamically, can you gossip about the Imam?
No.
Only if he does something that is completely wrong and it could affect the community. And that's according to fiqh. Otherwise you can't. But how many people here have not ever heard conversations about the Imam in your home? One. Thank you, because you just became a Muslim. Alhamdulillah, with you. But I'm so glad we got one. So, you know...
And Brandon.
And Brandon, yeah. MashaAllah. So, in Islam, what counts is not quantity alone, but quantity together with quality. And really and truly, folks, what I've been talking about the last 4 weeks,
Marriage.
we have really not realized those principles. Yesterday, someone came up to me at the picnic, and their mother squealed on them. And this is a grown man with children. And she said, oh, I wanted you to meet my son, but he didn't want to meet you because he said there's nothing wrong with him. And he knows you're a therapist. So, you know, I guess my occupation has sometimes its drawbacks.
I told my son, Imam Sai is my Imam. So one day he came up and he said, I'm your Imam.
Yeah, we got some sibling rivalry going on with my brother. How did he die?
Imam, I'm your Imam.
We are encouraged to increase the number of good Muslims, not superficial Muslims. Good Muslims are those who live by Allah's commands and follow His Messenger's guidance. These Muslims are encouraged to increase and multiply so as to establish Allah's religion in this life and enter His gardens in the next. And I want to say something, folks. With all that I've said about young people and their amygdalas not being developed, if your child, and this is going to really upset some people, and that's okay, I'm used to it. If your child comes to you and says, let's say your child is in high school and says, Mom, the boy kissed me today. And you become astaghfirullah, oh, and then I'm not going to talk to you ever again. And I'm going to give you the cold treatment for at least 3 weeks. Then are they safe? Have you created an environment of safety for that child? No. They need you. They need you to say, you know what? That's what happens. What did you learn? What did you learn? Did it scare you? Yeah. But we punish our kids for being normal. And we don't make it safe for them to come to us. We don't love them like shepherds. And maybe I went to the other extreme. Because my kids said, you know, Dad, you were wonderful. This is how they describe it. We could tell you anything. And you never reacted. You just listened to us and you would always say, well, how did that make you feel? Do you like that? Do you think that's good? But I'd rather have an open and safe relationship with my children that knew they were loved than for my children to think they weren't loved. And I hear too many children say, I don't feel like anybody loves me. I'm serious. Can you imagine how hard it is to be in high school and think that your parents don't love you? Maybe some of you know about it, because I know about it. Yes, sister.
So how do you discipline your child in that kind of circumstance?
You make a very clear understanding with your children that there are age-appropriate behaviors and you have expectations. And when you don't meet those expectations, these are the consequences. And that's very clear. It's written down. When I work with families, I have them write it down. I actually have them come up together with it. Let me tell you, I've had parents in my office and children, and I would say to the child, what do you think would be the appropriate consequences so that you can learn something from this experience? And usually they will give a more astringent, I don't like this word, punishment, than the parents would have given. And then we can negotiate. But children need to know this is not allowed, and if this happens, this is what will happen. But most children are not clear. It's called, let me test my water. In other words, let's see, I'll just sort of frustrate Mom a little bit, and frustrate her a little bit more today, this afternoon, and frustrate her tonight. And by the time Friday gets here, that thing that I want to do on Friday night that she was so vehemently against on Monday, I'll have worn her down by then. And it goes the same for Dad. It's funny, yesterday I was watching this go on. Can't help it. If you're a behavioral scientist, you're always watching stuff. And I was watching a kid manipulate their father. There was no crying, there were no tears. It was a complete act. was so adorable, mashallah. But it won't be adorable when they realize that the children are in control and not the parents. And I'm probably going to lose my young folks here today. I hope you appreciate the spirit and which I'm coming from. Okay. We need to guard our families from the hellfire. This is our responsibility as parents. And we do that with love, not with castigation. Because let me tell you, it is so hard when children feel that they cannot express themselves to someone with safety. So, the only reason your children don't tell you stuff is you haven't made it safe for them to tell you. Yes?
Do you feel that, or do you believe, or has it been proven that this happens due to culture?
There are many factors according to empirical evidence. Now, culture has to do with it, environment has to do with it. You know, look, I personally think that public school is one of the worst things that you can ever do to a child. You know, I just think, you know, the peer pressure, the things that kids are exposed to. We have a lot of empirical evidence that homeschool children do much better because they haven't dealt with the bullying aspect and all of that culture and society exposes them to, and that they actually do better socially based on what they've seen at home than what they get at school. Particularly when you live in a state that's number 49 in the United States. Florida, unless it's changed recently, is number 49 in the United States in education. So, another thing you need to study is when over 70% of the schools in Orange County are Title I schools. What does that mean? It means that more than 50% of the kids in that lunch are on free lunch. But ours are in this high 70 percentiles. And what that means in many of these schools is that one parent is in prison and one parent is working 2 or 3 jobs to survive, and that child is coming home to nobody. And those children sometimes don't get anything to eat from Friday and when they get lunch at school to Monday morning when they get breakfast. And in the summer they don't get food. I'm telling you, this is a problem in Orlando. So when you are sending kids to a school where there are a lot of angry people, what are they going to learn? Anger breeds what? Anger. And how many children are happy to go home with a little key and go in the house and maybe daddy's smoking crack? Have you ever seen a child jumping up and down about that? But I'm telling you, this is a big problem in Orlando. When we have an organization here that I used to work with Dr. Ruth McKeefery on that got national recognition. It was called IMPACT, Innovative Ministries for Parents, Teachers, Administrators, Parents, and Children. Sorry, did I say that right? Anyway, IMPACT. We would flood a school with volunteers to take it to be an E school or F school and make an A school out of it. I could not get a match to do that. Because we've lost our collectivity. We have the brightest people, but we don't want to share it. We don't want to go into a community and take an impoverished community and make it shine. Because we just think about ourselves. That's how the Western world is affecting this. So Muslims are enjoined to marry with the intention of increasing the number of righteous Muslims. This is why Allah in His wisdom referred to the man as the shepherd and imam of his house, who with his wife strives to raise his family upon the true religion. Abu Hurairah reported that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, marry, because I will exhibit your large numbers on Judgment Day. Those who strive to raise their family upon the true religion will be among the numbers of Muslims who will please and delight Allah's Messenger on Judgment Day to the extent that he will boast about them in front of the multitudes of nations who will be present. Abu Umayma reported that Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, "Marry so that on Judgment Day I will be delighted by your outnumbering other nations. Do not practice monasticism like the Christians." In other words, there's no celibacy in Islam. Celibacy is not normal. I'll get to you in just a minute, brother. Why do we have certain priests and certain people who are celibate ending up molesting children? Because it's not natural. Do we have imams that do it? Yes. Unfortunately, it happens. But we have a higher number of records in it happening where people are trying to be unnatural or unspiritual. In the Bible it says, produce and multiply. Be fruitful and multiply, it says in Genesis. Yes, brother?
So monasticism means just like not having intercourse at all?
It means basically it's like celibacy.
Celibacy is...
Celibacy is not having sex, right?
Abstain.
Abstinence. Did anybody else raise their hand that I missed? I don't want to... Okay. Now, I want to go back and I want to talk about this khitbah, this Islamic courtship. Because I touched on it very lightly and I want to go back to it. Particularly in light of what we talked about today. It is a process for seeking marriage. That is what it's for. It's not the dating game. What is really sad to me is that many MSAs on many campuses are nothing but the dating game. And there are those people in front of me that know what I'm talking about, probably. MSA doesn't stand for Matrimony Services Association. Because there is no adult guidance there. So the khitbah is a process to seek marriage. So I'm going to ask a question, and I don't want you to get defensive, anybody. I just want you to stay with me from an Islamic paradigm. To seek marriage, is it an emotional thing?
Yes.
Does anybody disagree with that? It's very emotional. Do you think when you're going to do something that's emotional, you need some help?
Absolutely.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. It is not a private audience with each other.
To what extent?
To any extent. You're not to be alone together. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that when a man and a woman are together, there is always a third party. And who is that? The shaitan. The devil. He's like hanging out. It is the act of asking one's hand in marriage. Now, what does this right here say? One. Listen, I talk to people, they got 4 or 5 fires going at the same time. And I am not kidding. Oh, alhamdulillah, brother. I'm talking to this brother, I'm talking to this sister, I'm talking to that. This is wrong. It's one. One at a time. Stand in line, but one at a time. And you can't entertain number 2 until you finish with number 1. Because you're messing with that person's life. And that's not Islamic. But I have this all the time, folks. Once the proposal is accepted, the pair are considered engaged. This is time to find out what is important or what really matters to that person, and to establish who it is you are thinking about marrying, to understand and discover them, to identify with them, and how their family of origin operated. Yes, brother.
So engage has two, Islamically engage is very different from the engage in Western terms, right?
Absolutely. The first thing that happens is you get some interest. If you have never been married before, then you send someone to talk to that family. I'm interested. Then you get together. Are you engaged yet? That's why it's called courtship. But when you decide to propose, then you are engaged. It is not discussing how infatuated you are with them.
So then what does it mean in Western terms engage? It's like they're then.
Well, typically in Western terms, when you get engaged, you have been dating for anywhere from one day to several years. And at some point during that dating, the guy will usually say to the girl with a little ring, he'll get on his hands and knees and say, "Will you marry me?" And that's called, if she says yes, they're now engaged. And usually they put it in the paper to announce it. That's the Western sort of culture. If she says, "Heck no, I'm not going to marry you," then they're not engaged. And he has to hope that the jewelry store will give him the ring money back for his ring.
Also, it means license.
Imam says,
Well, it does to some people, but not to all people. But somebody had their hand up here first, I believe, and then I'll come back over. Did somebody have their hand up and I missed it?
Is the proposal in Islam the same as the ring, or is it a different?
Well, there is no ring in Islam. There can be, but there's no requirement.
Okay.
You know, even though there's no requirement for a ring in Christianity, it's pretty much, it's a part of the ceremony. I mean, I think most Christians would say, well, the ring is the completion of that band. You know, there's a whole spiritual thing about the ring in Christianity.
So how does you just then say it? I want to marry you, yes, or how does that work?
In the Islamic world?
In the Islamic world.
Well, in the Islamic world, according to this kippah, if you have been married before, then you can actually do it yourself, but the best, and you're going to see a these later, is to have somebody go and ask on your behalf. Okay?
That was my other question.
But if you are not a virgin, we call it deflowered, that's the term in Islamic fiqh, then you don't have to have somebody, if you're deflowered, you don't have to have somebody go ask for you, but it's best practice to, because it's emotional. You know, how are you going to feel if you go up there yourself and say, "Listen, will you marry me?" And they say, "What? Are you crazy? Well, I didn't even know. I didn't even thought about anything like that." And you run off and you're torn from the floor. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of wisdom in the Islamic way. Now, did I miss a hand? Yes, thank you.
Is there any way we can go back to the other screen just real quick?
Sure.
Sorry. This is the way that you're supposed to do it.
Yes, this is called kippah.
But
Now, I want to tell you this, sister. No offense. I don't know who you married. I don't know anything about it. But I have a number of people in this room that were born into Islamic families. And they didn't know this until I told them.
my only question is, you get engaged and then you find out if you want to marry them?
No, you don't get engaged. You meet them. You are supervised. It's called a courtship. If the courtship is going good, they might say, "I'd like to marry you." At which point you're considered engaged.
Okay.
Courtship, the first step is going to the father typically or the mother and saying, I'm saying there's no father involved here. I'm interested in your daughter, or maybe the mother of the boy goes and says, "Could we entertain your daughter for my son?" So, okay, we can do that. So then we start getting together with them. And
The whole
hopefully,
family comes together.
well, not necessarily, but it could be. But the thing is, they don't come together alone. They don't get in the car and go to Regal Cinemas 21 Theater, whatever you want to call it, or Fashion Square 14 together. Now, does it happen? Heck yeah. Because you know what's really funny? One day after class, I was wanting some coffee, so I stopped at Starbucks, and there were these Muslim kids that I knew. And they were out on a date. And they took off running when they saw me. And I said, I love you guys. You don't have to run from me. Worry about Allah, but never worry about me. I'm here for you. I understand. I was your age one time. I know it's hard to believe when you look at my hair, but I was your age one time. I understand. I want you to be safe with me, not to run from me. Oh, yes, Brenda, sorry.
I see the thing about the private audience, and I understand that the first part, but before the engagement, do they ever get to talk?
And not supposed to touch.
Or not touch, but like just hang out the two of you, make sure, because I mean, I act differently with somebody else than if I'm in a group setting, or I act differently around different people, just to make sure you're a good match together, since you will be spending so much alone.
Here's the way it would look.
Okay.
I have a living room over here, and I have a den over here. There's an archway in between. And there's a wall right here. The living room over here, the den over here. Now, I'm just going to pretend that Tina is my daughter and Bassem is the suitor. I'm not going to sit like this. Because remember, I'm a shepherd. I've got a little bit of hikmah, a little bit of wisdom. And I understand that they want to talk. But you see, since Tina's my daughter, I'm going to be doing a whole lot of talking to her. About what you talk about and what you don't talk about.
It's also that way during engagement too, like private.
Yeah, during the engagement. Now, nowadays, Muslims actually believe that once we're engaged, we can be alone together. That's not according to Islam.
It is a process though to get to this.
They can get to hang out, but they hang out with us in the one section of the house and then
Nearby, to make sure everyone's on good.
Nobody's left.
So, what I didn't finish, but what I was trying to say is I don't sit in the living room with them and golf.
Okay.
I'm scared to go around. But I may be in the den, and they may be in that room, but, they're alone.
Okay.
But the thing is, just think about this. There's no kulwa. Kulwa means touching. These young people that I saw that day were holding hands. And they're not married, and they're not engaged. And their parents don't even know what's going on. And I'm saying this because I love you guys. Wherever you are in this journey, it's not safe. It is just not safe. Yes, sister.
I understand. I mean, it all makes lots of sense. But one question, like for security, how do you know someone isn't going to have a temper when you're married? Because when you know that someone's watching, you're not going to get angry. You're not going to burst out. You're not going to, start yelling and screaming or shouting. And when you get married and all of a sudden you're in a closed room, what happens behind closed doors? You're never aware of what's going to happen. How do you?
Now let me tell you what I believe. If somebody comes for my daughter, the first thing I'm going to ask the guy, listen, I need a $300 check to do a background check. I'm serious as a heart attack. That's the first thing I'm going to ask for. $300 check and a permission to do a background check. I'm going to go to his family and say, what kind of temperament does he have? Does he fly off the handle real quick? What happens when he doesn't get his way?
they lie. Yeah, they do.
They lie, but I'm going to fulfill my responsibility and I'm going to ask the person. Like, let me tell you something. When people come into my office and I'm acting as a wali, you know what I ask them? The guys, do you look at pornography? Because I've been trained to tell when people lie. Now, some people are better liars than others, and I miss the boat occasionally. Because a lot of times I pick right up on it. And I'll say, was something wrong with your eye? When they say, no, 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 no. I said, Something's wrong with your tongue? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, brother.
background checks, we do that in human resources all the time, but does not show what she's talking about. Does not show the temper, number one. Does not show that he is a computer hacker, which is a crime. Unless you're arrested and convicted, it does not come on the background.
But let me tell you a story, brother. You are 100% correct. But I'm going to do everything I can.
You will do due diligence by talking to all
And I'm going to ask you,
associates and friends.
who is your imam? How often do you go to the masjid? Oh, really? What masjid do you go to? Let's go see the imam. Well, if I go with Bassem, and you don't mind if I use you, I'm just using him as an example. I go with Bassem to the masjid, I say, well, introduce me to the imam, and he's saying, this is Imam, I'm having a senior moment. And I say, oh, how long have you known this young man, Imam? Well, this is the first time I ever seen him. So, we still have a responsibility. You are all right. You can hide certain stuff, but that's why I believe that everybody should go into marital education, marital counseling. There are questions that you can ask that help you understand a lot about a person. But I would go to their brother and their sister and say, listen, what kind of temperament is this? I do my investigation. Yes, brother.
So, what were you mentioning before about the $300 check? Or was it just for that money to hire a private investigator? Or?
No. You can simply get their social security number, just like when you get a job, and do a background check. Let me tell you a story. One of my students did this, and her daughter was in the kippah stage of marrying a doctor.
Kippah, which is?
Kippah, courtship. In other words, he had expressed an interest to the family.